and welcome to We Are the Cities Behind the Cover. I'm Vanessa Vallely. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Ann Hiatt to this session, talking about her new book, Bet on Yourself. Hi, Ann.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to our chat today.
Really looking forward to talking to you. So, obviously I know you, I know a bit about your fabulous background, but for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, the highlight summary is I spent the first 15 years of my career in tech, which was not plan A. That was a very unexpected journey for me. I studied international studies in school, so going into tech was unexpected. I have been through three major crises, global crises across my career. The first was at the very, very beginning, going through the dot-com crash while I was finishing up university and starting my very first job after university, working for Jeff Bezos during those crazy post-crash years. Then I made my way to Google, where I worked for 12 years and experienced the 2008 economic crisis there. And then I left Google after 12 years and became a founder myself, not expecting that less than a year later, we would experience this pandemic crisis. So I think I had to reinvent myself.
Much luck.
Yeah, and now post Google, I do consulting for CEOs literally all over the world. Most of them are around the scale up stage, kind of translating these lessons from Silicon Valley that I've learned from some of the greatest leaders in the world into these entrepreneurs and helping them succeed, which is really fun.
Fabulous that you're going to pay that experience forward. What was it like working for Jeff? Obviously founder of Amazon, very, very powerful man. But what was it like being in that role? What did you do for him?
So my original job title was just administrative assistant. And I was literally the junior most person in the entire company. But I also sat at the desk, literally the closest to Jeff's in the entire company. So I considered myself an apprentice to him. I listened to every conversation, read every briefing document, was in on every phone call, saw what was working, what wasn't. And I decided that I didn't want to limit myself by that original job description. I really wanted to absorb as much as possible and convert that into my own personal business school. And so the 3 years I worked for Jeff, I guess could be summarized by both terror and euphoria. Terror because I had no idea what I was doing. I was 20 years old. It was my first real job after school. And euphoria because there was such a thrill of doing things that I had never done before. In fact, no one had ever done before often, every single day, and just learning at a breakneck pace. It was really incredible. I knew very quickly once I sat down into that seat, I was watching history being made, and this was an irreplicable moment in time. So that part was really thrilling.
So do you think that, obviously working with someone that powerful, do you think that's what's made you how you are as a leader? Were there bits of Jeff that you took and said, do you know what, they're going to be part of Ann's makeup as a future leader? Do you think that role made you brave? Because if you can get through that, you can kind of get through anything.
Yeah, I mean, it would be an ultimate compliment for someone to see Jeff's leadership skills emulated in my own career and leadership style. But there definitely is something infectious about Jeff's vision and personality and the way he approaches his work. Jeff taught me to be fearless, where I by nature am inhibited by my natural perfectionism. My nature is very much that fear of being found out, that natural imposter syndrome, fear of looking stupid in front of people I admire. But the blessing of being in a job like that and at that stage of Amazon's growth, I joined the company before they'd yet had a profitable year, which is really hard to imagine now, given how dominant it is and how now Jeff is literally the wealthiest person in the entire world. He was not back then. So I watched him invent himself into who he is today. And I like to think that a lot of his best practices rubbed off on me, and I chose very purposely to try and adopt a lot of those habits and behaviors and leadership traits that he has.
I think that's really important when we look at, I think even, obviously the people that I've worked for are not quite Jeff Bezos, but, I kind of tried to take the best bits. I watched how they led, the mistakes that they made as well, to kind of come up with the leader that I wanted to be. I don't think anyone should really emulate anybody's style, but there are definitely certain aspects that you can kind of take and mix up and make them your own. So you then went on to work for another super, super powerful gentleman, which is Eric Schmidt of Microsoft, right? So different people, I take it, but how was that? And did you make that transition with this fearlessness in mind?
So it was very unintentional, honestly, my move from Amazon to Google. So I originally left Amazon after 3 years to do a PhD at Berkeley. So that's what brought me to California originally. And from my PhD program, Google recruited me. I first worked for Marissa Meyer my first 3 years. She was the VP of Search Products and User Experience at the time. That is a fancy long title, just meaning we made really cool stuff. To bring in eyes and to create this reputation of being useful. And other people got to figure out how to monetize that, because at the time, Google was not yet the dominant search engine that it is today. And so we were really trying to invent that future for ourselves. So I learned so much about fearlessness and doing things before you feel ready from Marissa. And because of the work that I had done with her and my reputation from working with Jeff Bezos, I was then recruited to work for Eric Schmidt while he was still CEO, and then stayed on with him for over 6 years after that, when he transitioned to being the executive chairman. Those skills, those best practices I learned at Amazon in those early years of the internet and early years of Amazon during very difficult, challenging, tumultuous times of the company, absolutely served me well to be able to be a good business partner and chief of staff to Eric Schmidt.
Amazing. And I mean, obviously you've learned so much for those individuals, but a lot of it you've done for yourself, as per the book, which we're going to come on to, Bet on Yourself, there has to be an element of, that self-confidence that you muster. And you talked a little bit about imposter syndrome. So, when you're doing big jobs like that and you're jumping into like these kind of what are now household names, how did you deal with that imposter syndrome? Did you lock yourself in a room and go, how do I kind of overcome this particular challenge? Or, how do you deal with that?
In retrospect, I can see a couple of things. I don't think I had this clarity of mind in the moment, but now looking back in the pattern of behaviors that got me over that and continue to be things that I need to lean on even now. I'm not over having those feelings of imposter syndrome. But I learned one really important thing from Jeff, which was that all of us back then were doing things that we had never done before. We did not have qualifications because we were trying to invent the future. So being in an environment where I saw that modeled from the highest levels in the company of just being willing to just try stuff, watch what broke, learn really, really fast, pivot and try again, because that was modeled by every single person in the company around me, it gave me permission to do that as well. And just be unapologetic when I tried something, it didn't work. And I just picked myself up really fast and kept running. And then now, as I'm thinking about my 12-year career at Google and how I did that, I can see that what I had to do, because we were moving so fast, was that I had to translate these imposter syndrome, potentially like opportunities to hold myself back. I had to translate those into what now social scientists are calling imposter moments, where it's not a permanent diagnosis of a condition that you don't have control over. You can just, when those feelings come or those self-limiting beliefs creep into your thought process, you can recognize it just as the moment that it is. And you say, I hear you, but I'm going to move on from this. And I'm going to choose to believe in myself and to feel powerful. And because I've seen that model by so many spectacular leaders before me, it gave me permission to do that and to allow it to just be a brief moment, take a breath and move on and bet on myself.
I love that. There's a number of things in there that I wish, some of the corporates would adopt that mindset that they're building for the future, the fail fast kind of model that, because otherwise they're never going to morph, they're never going to kind of move on. And I also love the imposter moment. Why call it a syndrome? Why is it something that we've got permanently? Why can't we just have these moments of self-doubt and go, do you know what? That's okay. I got that. I accept that. I'm going to move on from it. So yeah, I absolutely love that. So for everyone's watching, having this, let's not give ourselves an imposter syndrome. We can have imposter moments and that's okay. And that's all good. So that's amazing. So you've just written your new book, Bet on Yourself, which you clearly did. So tell us a little bit about the book.
It was a long process too. I was an unwilling author, if I'm honest. And this is something that had been proposed by friends and colleagues for many years. But really the moment wasn't quite right to write it until I had left Google. I was too much in the moment, in the flow. I needed some period of reflection to see if I could distill down some of these key best practices, and you need just a pause and reflection time to do that. So I started writing it 3 years ago because I just had the anniversary of the 3-year anniversary of the day I left Google. And that is when I started writing it. And I got really lucky with a friend introduced me to a book agent who introduced me to my now publisher, HarperCollins. So there was a lot of luck involved, but it had been a long time coming because I had spent so much time while still at Google kind of keeping notes and keeping track of what was serving me well, wasn't working, what advice I was consistently giving over and over again that I saw working for other people. And the book is really a compilation of that. So the reason I was unwilling at first was I thought, what book could I write that Eric Schmidt or Jeff Bezos themselves couldn't write better or have already written? They're both published authors already. That advice is out there. And what I realized was it was honestly a silly Instagram post that I have reflected on probably almost every day since over the last 3 years, where it just was a simple text post that said, there is someone out there who can only learn it from you. And I just, in those imposter moments that still come, I do come back to that mantra over and over again, because it's true that Jeff and Eric have given a lot of leadership talks and there's incredible wisdom they've shared. I think a lot of people self-select out of assuming that the best practices of these seeming super performers or celebrity CEOs could apply to us normal people, where we are, the chairs and the roles we're filling right now. And that mantra allowed me to see, like, me using my career as a case study in the book to show and demonstrate the ways in which I can translate this playbook from these super performers into my very normal career and opportunities can be done by other people as well. And so I think it makes it much more approachable, a little bit more accessible. It also maybe removes some of those excuses of thinking what works for super performers doesn't work for us, or maybe that only works in Silicon Valley or at Google and Amazon. And I really wanted to create a playbook that could be used by anyone in the world, regardless of their seniority or industry or current opportunities or job title.
I think that's really good, because often you work around these individuals, you've got a different perspective as well. So although we could read a book by Eric, we could read a book by Jeff, it's coming at it from their point of view, you know, their leadership. And I think it's really good sometimes to be able to look through a different lens and apply your own approach to that. So fantastic. So who's the book for? You know, is it entrepreneurs? Is it corporate folk? Who did you write it for?
I had 3 categories of people very specifically in mind as I sketched out the book. The first is those who are maybe entering the workforce for the first time or have had a major disruption because of this pandemic. I relate to that because I also was just starting my career in a global crisis. So I have in mind those whose jobs right now in no way resemble their plan A or their dream job. And I want to give them the best practices of how to put themselves in the driver's seat and use whatever opportunity they have at the moment to purposely build them and inch them towards what they really want, that's value aligned, that brings them joy in their work and satisfaction in what they're contributing to this world and their legacy. The second is those who are looking to level up. And that's where I was right around the 2008 crisis. I wanted to get the promotion. I wanted to be recognized as a leader, run those big like product launches and be seen as somebody who could be relied on and run a team. And how do you do that in a moment where resources maybe have dried up and options appear limited? How do you get seen as a leader and know how to volunteer for the right things to teach people how to think of you a little bit differently and up level? And then the third is for my fellow entrepreneurs, whether you're an entrepreneur within your company or an entrepreneur who's working on a side hustle or converting a side hustle into your main company and taking that big risk. I really had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit in mind throughout for those who are making a big scary leap and maybe have found themselves on the other side of this pandemic doing something they didn't expect and they're not really sure how to do perfectly. I want to show them that's also okay, and there's a playbook for that as well.
Fantastic. So all audiences. So, and I know it's available on pre-order, isn't it? So you can go off to Amazon and get that, and all good book retailers. So, you know, I always ask authors the same question: what's your favorite chapter in the book and why?
You're asking me to choose between my babies. Yeah, that's very hard. I think 2 come to mind. So chapter 4, I really like because I tell some of my most exciting stories from my career. I talk about the worst day of my professional life when I literally almost killed Jeff Bezos. Little teaser for that story that's detailed in there. And that chapter is titled Career Advancement. So this is, again, about that part of how do you be seen as a leader, especially when you've had massive failure, or especially when opportunities have dried up and you're really having to take some scary steps, raise your hand, expose some of your weaknesses, and be brave. if I could sneak in a second, like favorite part B, it would probably be chapter 7, because this is one that I recite most often right now, especially to my global consulting clients. And that chapter is about purposeful risk taking, about identifying these opportunities for growth that are aligned with your personal mission and value, and doing what I call engineering serendipity. How can you create your own luck? And for me, it's mostly about knowing what to look for so you can spot these opportunities for advancement and purposeful risk-taking in their infancy, when it would have passed you by had you not been on the lookout for it, and things that your competitors or peers would probably already miss. So if I could pick just two.
I love that. And I also love that you called the chapter career advancement, yet you talk about killing your boss. And if you would have done that, we wouldn't, maybe people wouldn't have the Amazon of today. So yeah.
Literally.
Fantastic. So, I mean, in terms of one bit of advice in the book, what would that be? So one bit of advice, I know I'm asking you again to choose between your babies, but
yeah.
You know, if people don't have the opportunity to read the book, which I sincerely hope they do, but if they don't, what's the one piece of advice that, you know, you'd love to share?
The first thing that comes to mind, I just think that's such an insightful question. And yes, it's hard to summarize 15 years of my career life into one single takeaway. But the first thing that comes to mind is really what I share in the conclusion. In the conclusion, I share a story where my brother and sister talked me into going skydiving for their birthdays. Their birthdays are 1 week apart, and they're kind of these bold, they're the bold members of our family, which is not me. I'm definitely more timid and measured, and, you know, despite what my career might lead you to believe, I am not a natural risk taker. But so they talked me into going skydiving with them. Now, I had been bungee jumping before. I hated bungee jumping. I found no thrill in it. I hated the whole experience. I was scared the entire time. I literally had to have the bungee jumping guy push me off the platform at my request because I couldn't get myself to jump. It was just, the ground was right there and death felt really, really too real. So as we were suiting up and signing the form saying, yes, I understand that death could be the end of this adventure for me, I didn't have that same terror. And even as we got in the plane and I was strapped into that baby Bjorn type of harness onto my like tandem skydiving guide, I wasn't scared. Even when they slid open the door and our legs were dangling out the side and he pushed us off, ditto. And I think it's because the horizon was just so enormous and the earth was so far that you didn't feel like you were falling. I felt like I was flying. And I think when you take translating that into our lives and taking bets on ourselves, I honestly think counterintuitively, sometimes the bigger bets can be less terrifying because the failures are kind of like, well, if I don't do this, this was kind of 1 in a million shot anyway. And I just find that really empowering. If I could share just one little snippet from the conclusion, if I can read just one little part, it says, I think my career and all of life's big bets are a lot like skydiving. When the stakes are so high, the pace so fast, and the margin for error so small that I couldn't really comprehend it, I experienced thrill rather than terror. I didn't know enough in those early stages to be appropriately afraid, so I was brave.
Fantastic.
I think over and over again, I've had these skydiving moments, and that's been the greatest privilege of this very unexpected career of mine. It has been the equivalent of skydiving over and over again. So I don't experience that fear. I just feel brave.
I love it. So metaphorically, we're taking people to just jump out the plane and enjoy the ride, right?
Exactly.
I absolutely love that. So another question I always ask my authors, if somebody came back to you in 3 years' time and they'd read your book and they was telling you about the impact your book had had on them, what would they say?
Those moments are starting to happen even in just those who have read a few sample chapters. So those who buy it during the pre-sale, if you email hello@annhiatt.co, I send you immediately some sample chapters so you can dive in without waiting for publication day. So I'm getting some early emails that literally bring tears to my eyes about conversations people have had. They've asked for a promotion or a raise that they've spent years terrified, not knowing how to have that conversation, or not wanting to appear ungrateful, or fearing that they might be told that they're not ready. I've had people come to me saying I was bold enough to take a risk on myself and leave a company that was just sucking my soul and life out of me, and realigning myself around my values and contributing to my community in a way that makes me feel proud. Those moments, that is so real. I don't want this to be theoretical. In fact, that was another thing that held me back originally from writing it was, yes, I have some really fun, insane stories, what it was like working at the foundation of the internet and the foundation of these companies that are part of our daily lives. So it can be read very narratively. There's some fun stories in there. But more importantly to me than that was to make sure it was really a playbook. So at the end of each chapter, there's actually something I call ROI sprints, which are questions you can ask yourself and thought exercises to translate these stories that I share from the wisdom I've gathered from my CEO mentors into your life today. And I also have a complete additional workbook to help you do the same that has downloadable worksheets. And that's what I really want to hear is somebody went through that thought process, did all the math, felt very prepared to be brave, and then either learned some things really, really fast, pivoted and are ready to try again, or got success right away. And that honestly, every day, Becky and I, my teammate, we relish the feedback coming in. So I can't wait for even more of that to come in and see how this has a ripple effect out in the world.
So you've heard it, right? So Anne, just repeat that email address for the couple of free chapters, because that's great little teaser for the book. So what was it again? So
if you email your order confirmation number to hello@annhiatt.co. That's hello@ANNHIATT.co. With your order confirmation, we will send you free chapters. We're also launching that. I've got some workbook downloads, some video tutorials, things to create some accountability systems for yourself, all free for those who buy it in pre-order. Once it's out in the world, it won't be free anymore. So take advantage now. This is huge value that I'm offering everyone who buys it in pre-sale for free immediately. You don't have to wait.
Fantastic. So order your book, send a confirmation order off that email address, and you can get started straight away. No waiting here. So Anne, one final thing. So, I mean, obviously you've set up your own company, you've worked around startups, entrepreneurs. I think there's a number of people that are, especially in light of the pandemic, thinking of setting up a little side hustle, maybe setting up their own business, maybe they just set up their own business in this crisis. What's the one piece of advice you would give to those individuals?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we could do a whole interview just on answering that question. I think my advice, honestly, is be brave. I earlier mentioned the two emotions of terror and euphoria. There's a great book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. By Bradley Horowitz, who is a co-founder of a very influential investment firm in Silicon Valley. And in that, he describes that there are only two emotions as an entrepreneur, terror and euphoria. And reading those words gave me permission that every day I vacillate between those two emotions constantly. So I want you to know, entrepreneurs out there, if you have those moments of terror being like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I can't believe people are going to pay me money for this, I don't know, accept that's what an entrepreneur feels like. You're doing it right. As long as you have that combination, these seemingly contradictory emotions, they're really two sides of the same coin. If you're feeling those two things, you are doing it right. And you can really trust that you're betting on yourself in the right way. Fabulous.
And it's been an absolute joy to talk to you. So, and you've definitely, made me feel like I should be betting on myself in certain ways. So I do appreciate that. So finally, just tell everyone, where can we find out more about you?
Thank you. This has been really, really fun conversation. And I do hope that it can become a back and forth. And a great way to do that with me is all of these resources are in a single place, which is the book's website, which is betonyourselfbook.com. And from there's all the links of all your favorite places that you like to buy books where you can get a copy. You have access to all those free resources I mentioned. And also there's links to my social, which is what really important to me because I want to hear what these messages have meant to you, will work for you, what questions are remaining. And I'd love for this to become a back and forth conversation where we really engage and keep each other accountable on these big bets we're making on ourselves. So on Instagram, you are at? I'm at Instagram, I'm Ann Hiatt, ANNHIATT, as well as on LinkedIn. And on Twitter, I'm Ann R. Hiatt, ANNRHIATT.
Fabulous. So go give Anne a follow, definitely. I've loved getting to know Anne over the last few weeks. Go buy the book, you get all those free resources as well. And again, just leave to say thank you for spending time with We Are the City Behind the Cover. It's been an honor to meet you and look forward to the future. Absolute pleasure, Vanessa. Thank you so much. Your community means a lot to me. I've received so much wisdom from the
articles and resources you provided. And it's a thrill to be able to contribute just a little bit back.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.